Welcome back to Sheet Metal is Fun. Today we're going to make a section of ductwork. Then we're going to add an end cap and a collar. That's going to turn it into a plenum. It's going to be quite an adventure today. And while we're at it, I want you to keep an eye out for Sammy the Shop Cat. And keep your ears peeled for Bella the Chihuahua watchdog. Let's go inside. It's going to be a good one today. Welcome back to Sheet Metal is Fun. Today we're going to make a plenum. A plenum is a word for an air distribution box. If you're a car guy or gal, underneath the carburetor in the intake manifold, that area is the plenum. That's where the air enters and is distributed to the various cylinders of the engine. So in air conditioning and heating, the plenum is the first chamber where the conditioned air, whether it was heated or cooled, enters into the plenum and is then distributed through either flexible round ducts, or that's Sammy the cat. Hey Sammy. Through either flexible round ducts or rigid rectangular ducts, it's distributed from the plenum into the living space. So come on in. We're going to today we're going to make a plenum. It's going to have an end cap. That's what makes it a plenum. Instead of without an end cap, it's just a piece of duct. A duct means the air can enter in one end and exit through the other. On a plenum, the air enters and then it has an end cap, and we're actually going to put a collar. We're going to turn this into a 10-inch round collar. So today's example would be what you would use if you're going to use a flexible duct. This is going to be our end cap. This is going to be our duct. So today we're going to make a plenum. It's going to be a 12 by 14 plenum, and it's going to have a flange on one end and an end cap on the other. So let me show you a picture. We make it in a half section. It's easier to fabricate that way. It takes up less material, and that way we can ship it out to when we're going to the job site, we can send it out KD. KD means knocked down. It means broken down and not assembled. So whenever this plenum is shipped out KD, it takes up less space in the back of the truck. Come on in, let me just give you an idea of what we're going to make today. We're going to make a 12 by 14 plenum. It's going to be 12, 14. Like we said earlier, whenever you make these things, give yourself a fighting chance. Make your drawing to scale. This is what we're going to make. So you notice this side's a little shorter than that side. We talked earlier about that. Right now, while it's fresh in your mind, make yourself a good representative drawing. And this is this way, whenever it gets down to it and you begin the fabrication, if you start thinking about other things, you start thinking about lunch, thinking about dinner, thinking about taking that car out for a drive and burning the tires. I think I'm going to do that after this video. So this is a 12 by 14 plenum, and it has a 1/2 inch flange on the bottom side. These flanges will be used to screw it into the top of the furnace. A furnace can be an upflow furnace. That's the kind you'll mostly see in a garage. It's over in the corner of your garage, and the air goes through the furnace, up through the plenum, and then into the house. That's an upflow. They can also go in the attic, and that would be a horizontal application. So this plenum, the forced air unit would be horizontally situated. The plenum would be on one end. It would have a plenum on each end, a return air plenum and a supply plenum. For today, we're making a supply plenum. This is the air exiting the furnace and entering the registers, entering into your house. Whenever you have floor registers in your house, a lot of times the plenum, the forced air unit will be a downdraft unit or downflow, and the air will enter through the plenum, through the forced air unit, and be conditioned, whether heated or cooled, and then go underneath the house and come up through the floor registers. This is what we're going to make. So we're going to make it in a half section. So we're going to come here. This is what we're going to make first. Now, to assemble this corner where this half meets this half, we're going to make a longitudinal seam, and it's going to be called a Pittsburgh. Just like the city, Pittsburgh. We're going to use our Pittsburgh machine, which is a lock forming style machine. I think you're going to get a kick out of that. But just in case you don't have a Pittsburgh machine, I'm also going to show you how to make a Pittsburgh on our regular hand brake. So this is a hand Pittsburgh, and it takes 1 1/4 allowance. It takes a little more of an allowance since we're going to try to bend it by hand. I'll show you what this diagram means as we get into it. All right, so today we're making a 12 by 14 plenum. We're going to make it in half sections. So we're going to add 12, 14. That's going to be 26. Our Pittsburgh takes 1 inch, and we're going to have a 1/4 inch on the other. A lot of times when I have an allowance, I just make a mental note to myself. It's a 1 inch and a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to add 12 and 14. That's going to be 26. And I'm going to add that 1 1/4 allowance. That's going to be 27 1/4. I've taken this opportunity to speed things up a little bit, and I've cut these two pieces, 27 1/4. Look at that, 27 1/4. So this material is 26 gauge galvanized, and so one of the things we always want to do when we're fabricating, since we live and die by the tape measure, always double check yourself. I'm double checking to make sure my two pieces are the same. I've made all my drawings on here. Now, since it's 26 gauge, we can notch 2 at a time. It's thin enough material, it's not going to be a problem. So we're going to be able to mark it, notch it, and then we're going to bend it. Man, look at that tool tray. Wow. All right, so we are always going to, what we want to do is eliminate as many possibilities to make mistakes as we can. Let's always put the Pittsburgh on the shorter side. In this case, we're going to put the Pittsburgh on the 12-inch side. So I'm going to make a 1 inch allowance. I'm going to make a 1/2 inch stride, 1/2 inch there, half. This side gets the 1/4 inch. You may have to slow down, go back over this thing again. That's the 1/4, and that's another 1/2. There's a 1/2. Each one of these notches is a different dimension. I'll show you how to make this. Let's do that in our next episode. Let's make this scribe. Back to 1 inch, 1/2 inch. We're making a 12 by 14. So we're going to do 12. But since we're measuring from the end, there's a 1 inch allowance. We've got to make this mark at 13 inches. That's 12 plus the 1 inch for Pittsburgh. Let's mark that on here. That's the universal symbol for Pittsburgh. On this side, we're going to bend a 1/4 inch up. X is always U. If you see this, you'll know if X means it's bending up toward you. All right. So always double check yourself. We're making a 12 by 14. I've got my 1 inch Pittsburgh on here. I'm coming over 13 inches. And so I know right now I have a 14-inch side plus a quarter. So this mark should be 14 and a quarter from the end. Just takes a second to check it. Look, there it is, 14 and a quarter. Now we know we're on the right track. So while we're measuring, let's go ahead and flip this around, measure the other side. Now we flipped it around. Now we have to remember, since this, if this piece was square, if it was 12 by 12, this wouldn't be a problem. It's not, it's a rectangle. So we need to take this same mark, that's 13, put that 13 right here. Double check ourselves. What should it be? 14 and a quarter. There we go. 14 and a quarter. All right, now we've got our marks. I'm gonna put my glasses on. You don't have to do that. That's just for me. All right, here we go. Let's notch this. Remember, when we notch, make sure we cover the piece. Now, a flange, we're putting a flange on this end. A flange notch is straight down. It's a straight cut. So in this middle notch, we don't remove any material. We're just going to make it a straight cut in. Down here, straight in. Cover the piece. Cover the drop. So the same thing here. Notch for the Pittsburgh. Oddly enough, end cap is also a straight notch. So here we go. Straight notch in. Straight notch in. Make sure that piece can't get to us. So we've talked about this before. While it's fresh in your mind, let's go ahead and mark this out. So when we get over to the break, we won't have any questions. This end is a flange. This is the flange at the bottom. So we are X, so this flange is going away from us. This end is an end cap. End cap we don't do anything to. That's one of our favorite ones. This is a 1/4 inch. If I make a really fast scribbly mark, if it's anything other than a 90, we're going to make a note of that. So if I give you this piece and I tell you to go over to the break and bend it up, I don't want to catch you with a protractor trying to measure my scribble. If it's something other than 90, if I wanted a 62-degree bend on there, I would draw that. I would show you if it's anything other than a 90. If I just make a real quick, all I'm showing you here is that this bend is up. It's always going to be 90 unless otherwise noted. So we've got this here. Let's put a couple of cross breaks in it. When a plenum is this small, anything 12 inches and under, by codes, we don't have to cross break, but I think cross breaks look so cool. So we're going to put them in anyway. So let's go ahead and mark the one underneath. End cap, Pittsburgh, flange, 1/4. If we were going to insulate this, we're not going to insulate it. But if we were going to, the universal symbol is 1 inch of insulation. So this is how I could draw, if we were working at a metal shop, let's see. If we were working at a shop, what I've shown you inside this circle is what you need to know to make this piece. It's 20-inch stock. That's how tall it's going to be. It's going to be 12 by 14. It's going to have a flange on one side. Industry standard flange is 1/2 inch. If it's going to be something other than a 1/2 inch flange, we'll note that. So if I needed a 7/8 flange or 1 1/4 inch, flange and end cap, and it's going to be insulated 1 inch. So with this, with the writing inside this circle, you would know how to make what we're going to make. So in order to make it a plenum, instead of just a duct, we need to make an end cap. This is our 12 by 14 end cap. So the way an end cap works is it comes up a half and down a half. And then you're going to see it after we make it. This is going to go right on the end of our duct. I've drawn this open for clarity. So here's our flange, here's the end of our duct. Our end cap is going to slide over the end of our duct. And now once we install the end cap, it's no longer duct, it becomes a plenum. Then we're going to cut a 10-inch hole and we're going to install a 10-inch collar. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is notch the end cap. So the end cap is cut to the size of the duct, and it's a 1/2 inch up and a 1/2 inch down, but we're doing that on both sides. So it's the side, this piece is cut size of the duct plus 1 inch here, a 1/2 and a 1/2, and 1 inch here. So if you want, I talked earlier, sometimes what I'll do, if I have an allowance, I'll actually just make myself a drawing. So this piece is going to be a 12 by 14 end cap. It's going to be +2. So we're going to have a piece 14 by 16. That's what this piece is right here. This piece is cut 14. There's 14. There's 16. But since we're going to fold these ends over, we're going to notch the corner out. Now what I've done is I've made myself a little template that goes on Choppy McChopperson over here. Back when the writing was new, it said end cap right here. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut that corner off. I'm only stomping as much as it takes to do the job we need. You notice I didn't stand up and jump down and try to drive the pedal through the floor. I don't need it that much. Let's give it how much it needs. That's how much it needs. All right. Now the fun begins. Let's go over here. Here we are at the 10-foot break. Here's our end cap. I made a note here. Like I mentioned before, this piece is really too small. We don't need a cross break. The only reason we put a cross break that you would get when the fan comes on and off, you'll get that oil can sound. That's why we put the cross break in there. Now today's cross break, all I'm doing is putting a very small cross break in the piece. What we're going to end up doing is cutting a 10-inch circle. So what this cross break is going to do is it just located the center of the end cap for us. Now we know where to put one leg of our compass whenever we draw the circle for the 10-inch. So we didn't need the cross break, but in a matter of a couple of seconds, we located the dead center of the piece. So, when bending things up, there's always going to be a sequence that we want to follow. The sequence that we always want to follow is do the function that has the least amount of an effect on the piece we're going to make. So if we had a big flange and we turned the flange, that's going to make it a little harder to manipulate into the break. So you always want to do the thing that causes the least amount of change to the piece. So that would be a cross break. Since both of these pieces are the same, we can do them both. We can do them two at a time. So we're going to go corner. Just give it a little. Pull out. Next corner. like I said, 12 inches, industry standard is 12 inches. If your duct is less than 12, it doesn't require a cross break. But what you and I are doing today is we're learning how to fabricate. And so what I want you to do is take what we're learning and apply it to what you're going to make. So very often what you make will require a cross break because it'll be greater than 12 inches. All right. We got to go run the Pittsburgh on this. Let's go over there. I don't know if you can hear me, but this is called a Pittsburgh machine. Let's run our piece through it. Going right. So the Pittsburgh machine is a lock forming machine, and this brand is actually Lock Former brand Pittsburgh machine. Each one of these is called a station. If you look really close, these are 3.5 inches apart. There's a shaft in there, and what it does is as the metal passes through, each set of rollers affects the metal in just a little more. It adds a little bit more. So the first one may start a bend and the next one may fold it over. So as the sheet metal goes through the machine and hits each station, it folds the material. Here's what we're looking at right here. It takes the end, folds it over, folds it back, brings over here and offsets it down so that the outside of the duct, this is the inside, the outside of the duct is always flush. So let's look at that. The outside of the duct is flush. That's the outside. Doesn't that thing do great? What a cool machine. So the inside, it has this offset that we talked about. It comes up, and this shoulder right here, once we put this together, that shoulder keeps our plenum from collapsing. It can't go any farther this way because it's hitting this shoulder. And then what we're going to do is bend this lip, this flange over, and that will capture our piece in the Pittsburgh. So it can't come this way because we're going to bend this over, and it can't go that way because it's going to hit the shoulder. Now this actually gets a 1/4 inch bend on it that goes into that recess. This recess right here. So our piece will go into that recess right there. So this shoulder will keep it from collapsing, and when we bend this tab over, it'll keep it from coming apart. That's going to be fun. So what I've done here is, if you don't have a Pittsburgh machine, we can make a hand Pittsburgh. This is made by hand. I want to do one real quick. So you can just follow me around. This machine, the Pittsburgh machine uses a 1 inch allowance. It consumes 1 inch of material to do the lock forming seam. But if we wanted to make one by hand, we can't make one that tight. We have to use 1 1/4 inches. So let's go over here to the brake, and I'm going to show you how to make a Pittsburgh by hand. So I have I've made a mark 1 1/4 inches in from the edge. Hopefully somewhere in that reflection you can see that scribe line. So we're going to go 1 1/4 inches from the edge. going to bring it down. We're going to bend it up 90 degrees. We're going to push it in all the way, which the bending leaf on this brake is a 1/2 inch. So we're going to push it in all the way. We're going to bend it over. Now we're going to flip it back around. We're going to bend it one more time. Now we're going to come along here. We're going to bend this over. Always use a mallet around the brake. Don't ever use a hammer on the brake. There's a chance you could miss and you hit these parts. And there's some old dudes that lose their mind if you do that. Don't do that. Old people. All right. Now we're going to flatten it out. Now we're going to add that little kick. So I'm going to push this in right here. We're going to add that little kick that makes it flush on the outside. I have to tap this down because whenever we clamp the brake, this naturally wants to come up. So I just want to get everything on the same plane, everything going this way. Nice and easy. Just like back when we made the tool tray. We're not trying to flatten this out because our piece is going to have to go into this recess right here. We don't want to flatten it, that makes it harder to use. Okay, let's take a look at that. I'm hoping you can see what we've made here. It comes down, goes back, over, has this offset so we're flush on the outside. We have an offset on the inside. There's that shoulder. That shoulder keeps our piece from collapsing, and we bend this tail over. The tail keeps it from expanding. So this is what you're looking at right here. If you wanted to see what the end of this looks like, it looks like that. Maybe yeah. Now, once we get ready to put that together, you're going to love it. All right, while we're in the bending mood, let's go ahead and bend up our end cap. The front of this brake is a 1/2 inch. Each one of these is a 1/2 inch. So we're going to make it flush in the front. We'll bend it over. We're going to flatten it out, but we don't have to smash it to smithereens. We just have to just flatten it over. Same thing here. We're going to go around all 4 sides, fold a hem on it. Side. So what I'm doing right now is I'm bending up the end cap as old school as you can get. We're using the brake. Just as we use the Pittsburgh machine over there to run the Pittsburgh, most shops are going to have a machine, a lock forming machine, that you run this through and it's going to bend the end cap on there for you. So what I did is turn the piece over. Now I'm turning it into an end cap. So by showing you the hand Pittsburgh, number one, maybe You don't have a Pittsburgh machine, but you want to use a Pittsburgh Seam. Now you know how to make it by hand. So if your end cap machine is broken and you still need to make an end cap, now you know how to make one on the brake. This last one, I have to bend down in front. Otherwise, it would flatten down our project. So I'm going to put 1/2 inch. All these are all 1/2 inch. So whenever I clamp this in here, I don't want to clamp it so tight that we make it hard for ourselves to assemble it. Look at that. Look at the position of the handle. I didn't close it all the way, and I don't need to. I'm going to hold it. There's our end cap. So what happens is, there we go. I think that one's open enough. Maybe you can see that one. The end of the plenum is going to go into that recess right there. That's awesome. All right, wait here. Let me grab my piece. Earlier I told you, whenever you're bending up your project, the sequence is always go to the next one that affects it in the least amount. So we have a 1/2 inch flange, we have a big 90, and we have a 1/4 inch flange. What's the next one? 1/4, that's the smallest one. The 1/4 inch flange is our next. The thing about the 1/4 inch flange is it's going to be hidden inside of our Pittsburgh. So even if we have to flatten it or manipulate it or change it, we're still going to be all right. There's our 1/4 inch. Now the end cap, you don't have to do anything with. Now we're going to turn a flange away from us. Up toward us. We are here. This came up toward us. This one goes away from us. Here we go. Up 90. See what we've done there? So we started with our cross break because that really affects our piece in the smallest way. Our next bend was our 1/4, next one up. Our next one was this 1/2 inch flange. Now our last bend, we're going to turn this flange down and it's going to hang off the end of the brake. Now we're going to go to a notch. There's that notch. Clamp it there. Down here. We're going to bend this up 90. Now, where you can go wrong at this point is you can overthink the process and you can think, oh, I've made a left, now I need to make a right. The way ductwork goes together, they're both the same. Let's do that same thing again. Next bend, 1/4 inch. So 1/4 inch up. Next bend is our 1/2. It goes to the outside. Here's X. It's going away from X. Here's X. This one came up toward X, away from X. That's why we had to flip the piece over. We're going to flip it over, and we're going to make our bend a 1/2 inch. 90 degrees. There's our 90. Now we're going to put it in. Both of these pieces are exactly the same. If you overthink yourself, you're going to make a left and a right, and it won't work. Make two the same. So I've made both of them the same. We don't have a left and a right. We have two exactly the same. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to put those together. And that's going to be our 12 by 14 Plenum. Let's take our end cap. Let's head over to the bench. We're going to make a little bit of noise. Let me put on my earplugs here, because I still appreciate good music. And I've been a sheet metal guy long time. So we put a cross break in here just so it would show us where the dead center of the end cap was. We didn't need the cross break mechanically because we're going to remove a lot of this material anyway. Look at that. We know where the middle of the sheet is. Now we're going to use our dividers. We're going to put a 10-inch round collar in the end in the end cap end of our Plenum. So what I like to do is go to my ruler, and rather than start by guessing off of the end, this is a good chance for you to do a little bit of math. I'm making a 10-inch hole. I'm going to put one leg at 5, one leg at 10, and then I'm going to double check myself. Again, double check every opportunity you get. I could have measured here with my tape measure, but I've gotten the habit of just going halfway and then double checking myself. Here we go. Since this collar is going to get so close to the edge of the end cap, it's going to be hard for our snips to get in there. We're going to flip this over, and we're going to draw our circle on the back side. I'm going to try to spin that around in a few directions. Hopefully you can see our 10-inch circle. All right, here is magic. So now we want to cut a 10-inch circle in here. Here's how you start a 10-inch circle. Here's how you start a circle. I like the screwdrivers to have the square shoulders on them. They work better. So I'm going to come just inside. I'm going to hold it at an angle, something like that. I'm going to hit this. I'm going to put that against my hip. So look what I just did. I just cut into the metal and I just drove it sideways, and that gave me a little slot. The next thing I'm going to do with that slot is I'm going to use my reds. So not a lot of pushing. You can see that I've created something here that would be a problem if we were pushing, just twisting. Let's go to our sense of accomplishment, pull out our reds. And now what I can do it's just easier if you take a little bit out. All right. Now earlier in an episode we talked about the 85-15 rule of cutting. I'm holding the end cap. If the end cap was already installed in my Plenum, then I could use two hands to make the cut. But sometimes I got to use that one hand to hold the end cap. So you notice when I first started, I was using a hand to hold it. Now, with my left hand, I'm spreading and shearing. Spreading, shearing, and talking. to the piece. That's how we get a round hole. So you notice I cut it from the back side, because if I was cutting from the front side, this was going to cause interference whenever the hem of the end cap was going to interfere with our snips. So we cut it from the back side. Let's go ahead and put this in the trash. Now, I got my earplugs in. Now, the Pittsburgh lesson. So, the Pittsburgh, we have a 1/4 inch here, and we have the Pittsburgh seam here. Can you see, can you get right here? The 1/4 inch goes inside that recess. So far, so good. So, since we already have that where we want it, let's tap it over. Now we can't lose it. Now, you know what, over here on this side. Here's our 1/4 inch. Here's the recess of our Pittsburgh. So you're gonna watch me, and I'm gonna feed that 1/4 inch into the recess. Did you see that? There we go. That's why I have my earplugs in. Now, when we fold this tail over, the shoulder inside prevents it from collapsing, and the tail on the outside does not allow it to come apart. Now we're going to take our hammer and bang it down together. Earlier, when we were making our piece and we realized we were going to make it a 14 by 12, I mentioned you always put the Pittsburgh on the short side. Here's the reason why. This way, when you're putting it together, you're in a better range for hammering. Some of these pieces, what if this was 12 by 18? Then it would be all the way up here, and we would be assembling the duct up here. So always put your Pittsburgh on your shortest side. That's one of those rules that it's a good one to have. Doesn't cost anything to have it, but it's something that you don't ever have to change. You always know where you're going to put that. Here we go. Here's our other side. I'm going to insert the 1/4 inch. Here's our 1/4. Here's our Pittsburgh seam. I'm going to insert the 1/4 inch into the Pittsburgh. I'm not going to go too far, and I'm also not pushing and prying. I just lock that corner in. But now there's times whenever we go to put this together, it may want to give us trouble. And if it does, I use something to drive it in. Today, it went together very nicely. But you just want to make sure that you've entered the lock all the way down to the shoulder. Here we go. When you're pounding over the Pittsburgh, always watch the position of your knuckles. Does this look like this would be a good way? This would be bad, right? If I miss something, now I have an upturned flange that's trying to ruin my day. So I'm going to strike it from this area. So there's our plenum. This is our end cap end. Notice we didn't do anything to this end because we're going to add the end cap to it. I'm going to flatten out that Pittsburgh because the end cap is going to slide right on here. Remember, the end cap came up and then went back down. So we're going to start here and there. That's where a sheet metal hammer comes in handy. Look at that. So we're sliding the end cap onto the end of our plenum. Once we get it, let's lock it in place. All right. Here we go. Now, this is really tight here, and it's open over here. Let's do the open side first. Open side is open, so it's going to a little be easier. Don't force it. Use the inertia of your hammer. So now we can see we have two tight edges here. But as we just tap this down, fold that over. Tap it down, fold it over. Now what we would want to do is add sealant to the inside because we don't want any air leaks. So this is what keeps the end cap from coming off. We folded the ends over, and that keeps the end cap so it can't come off the end of our plenum. The fact, we know it can't go any farther this way because it only has a 1/2 inch flange on it. Here's the last part of our puzzle. That's cool, ain't it? Isn't that beautiful? All right. Now we're going to make a 10-inch collar. So we could go along here and make notches. Or we could use this hot dog tool. This is what we call a dovetail notch. On the next lesson, I'm going to show you how we do collars here at our shop. We don't use this method, but this is the method used by probably 90%. There's one more type of tap in. It would be called a spin in. But what we do here is we use a Pittsburgh on our collar, and we install the collar into the end cap using a Pittsburgh. That'll be next time. Maybe I'll show you that one. Let's go ahead and finish the end of this. Look at that. All right, follow me over here to the rolls. Since we wrote on that, let's put that to the inside. That's not enough, so let's add some more. This machine is called a slip roll. This is how we roll up pieces of round duck. Look at that, isn't that cool? Now you get to see another tool. All right, this is called our spot welder. This is our small handheld spot welder. We have big Monstro in the back. That thing will knock holes in stuff. One of the things we did earlier is I drew a 1/2 inch scribe line on the inside of my collar. That's how much overlap we're going to have. To get the diameter for a 10-inch collar, we used pi. So many of us numbskulls, I'm speaking of myself, when the instructor told us we were going to need pi, we thought we'd never need algebra in our lives, and here we just used algebra. So this tool is called a spot welder, and the voltage is passing from one arm to the other, and then we talked last time about focus. It focuses the energy through these two sharpened points, and as the voltage passes from one arm to the other, whatever's in between here, it becomes almost molten, just this side of molten. So I'm going to clamp it, start it, clamp it. I like to give it a little wiggle. Spot welder. It welds, but it welds in a spot. Spot welder. Pretty good, huh? Pretty good name. So what I'm showing you today, making a collar, maybe you don't ever make a collar. You might just buy one. But that's not what our lesson is about. Our lesson is not about what can you buy. Our lesson is you becoming more proficient, more and have a higher understanding of what you're making, and more awareness of what's going on around you. So that's why I show you how to make a collar. You can buy a collar, but let's say you're somewhere and you don't have, there's no supply store open, you got to make one. That's how you make it. So not only have we made it, this is a crimper. We're going to go around a couple of times. If you try to do it all on the first go around, the metal doesn't appreciate it and it makes things difficult. You'll get a lot of buckling. And you'll have a real shortage of cooperation. You don't want that. You want cooperation. All right. So what we've done here is we crimped this. So now one can go inside of the other. We talked earlier about you can't put a 1-inch peg in a 1-inch hole. This is a 10-inch duct. If you wanted to put another 10-inch duct on here, this one had to be a little smaller. So since we crimped this edge, we lessened the circumference, and a smaller circumference is a smaller diameter. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to go every other. The ones that we did with the notcher, they're easier to bend because there's no resistance. The ones that we notched with the snips, now when I bend this one up, it wants to try to get caught on the one next to it, because with the V notcher we took out a piece. Here we just have a notch, so it wants to get caught on the one next to it. There we go. We did one in, one out. Now I'm going to go to the ones that are on the inside. I don't know, can you see in there? See how half of them are on the inside? Maybe they don't show up too well yet. So I want to make sure this is tight. And then I'm going to bend that flange over. That little tab, bend it over to the inside. So I'm actually pushing in. See this gap? I'm tightening up that gap. So get a good look at that. Every other one is on the back side, one is on the front. So the collar can't pull out and the collar can't go in. So the next thing we would do before we went to use this is we would put a bead of sealant around this area right here. We don't, because right as it is right now, we could get an air leakage and we don't want to do that. There we go. $12 by 14 plenum with a 10-inch collar in it. Am I forgetting anything? No. Oh yeah. Thanks for stopping by. Sheet metal is fun. Plenum, Pittsburgh, end cap, crimped collar, dovetail connection. It looks just like our drawing. So now you know how to mark up, you know how to mark down. We put these cool cross breaks in there. That's to prevent oil canning. So when the furnace comes on, it doesn't inflate the plenum and give you that sound that you don't want to hear. We crimped this because the air is going to be flowing out. So the next piece is going to go on the outside of this, so your air will have less of a chance of leak. And then after you make this connection, you're going to want to seal that anyway. All right, that's it. Plenum, end cap, dovetail collar. Sheet metal is fun. Thanks for coming by. I'll see you guys next time. I appreciate your time.